Hello everyone, this video tells the story news about Robert Wright, his wife and found it, but after investigating her found out that it was her ex. It's really crazy and interesting story. Your opinion in the comments. Enjoy your viewing.
My brother cheated on his wife, which led to his, but after investigating, I found out it was her ex. I always admired my older brother, Tom. He was the kind of person who seemed to have everything figured out, a steady job, a beautiful home, and a loving wife, Linda. But everything changed the day Linda discovered Tom had been unfaithful. Their marriage, which had seemed so perfect, shattered in an instant. Tom confessed to me late one night, his voice thick with regret. He admitted his affair, explaining it was a moment of weakness that spiraled out of control. I urged him to come clean to Linda, hoping honesty would help mend the rift. Tom promised he would, but before he could, he vanished without a trace. Linda was hysterical, oscillating between rage and sorrow. She blamed herself, she blamed Tom, and sometimes she blamed the mysterious woman who had enticed him away. As Tom's brother, I felt a responsibility to find him. I had to know what happened. The police were involved, but they didn't seem to take the case seriously. They saw it as another domestic dispute where the husband had simply left. But I knew Tom. He wouldn't abandon his family like this. Something was wrong, and I was determined to uncover the truth. I started my investigation by retracing Tom's steps. I visited his workplace and spoke with his colleagues. They described Tom as a diligent worker, but they also mentioned how he seemed distracted in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. I found his last project on his desk. Incomplete, a glaring anomaly for someone as meticulous as Tom. Next, I interviewed his friends. Most of them were clueless, but one friend, Mark, mentioned something peculiar. He had seen Tom arguing with a stranger in a bar a few days before he disappeared. This lead took me to the bar, where the bartender remembered Tom in the altercation. The stranger was described as tall, with dark hair and a menacing demeanor. The bartender provided a grainy security camera footage, which I took to the police, but they dismissed it as inconclusive. Frustrated with the lack of progress, I turned to Tom's phone records. I noticed several calls to an unknown number in the days before he vanished. After some digging, I discovered the number belonged to a private investigator named James, who Tom had hired to follow Linda. This revelation was a bombshell. Why would Tom hire someone to spy on his own wife? I tracked down James, who initially refused to talk. After much persuasion and a small bribe, he opened up. James confirmed that Tom had suspected Linda of having an affair and had hired him to gather evidence. James handed me a file containing photographs and notes detailing Linda's meetings with a man named Michael. According to James, Tom had confronted Linda with this evidence the night before he disappeared. Armed with this new information, I confronted Linda. She broke down, admitting the affair, but insisting she had nothing to do with Tom's disappearance. Her tears seemed genuine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Days turned into weeks with no new leads. I was about to lose hope when I received an anonymous tip. The caller told me to check an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The police were reluctant, but I convinced them to accompany me. As we searched the warehouse, a foul smell led us to a hidden room. There we found Tom's lifeless body buried under a pile of debris. The autopsy revealed that Tom had been murdered, strangled to death. The discovery turned the missing person case into a homicide investigation. Linda was immediately brought in for questioning. She maintained her innocence, but the evidence was stacking up against her. In Tom's phone records, I found a series of text messages from Linda, sent the night he disappeared, pleading with him to meet her at the warehouse. The texts painted a picture of a desperate attempt to reconcile, but the location and timing were suspicious. Forensics also found traces of Linda's DNA on Tom's clothes and under his fingernails, indicating a struggle. Despite the mounting evidence, Linda continued to deny any involvement in Tom's death. She hired a high-profile attorney, Sarah Jenkins, known for her aggressive defense tactics. The case went to trial, and the courtroom became a battleground. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. Reporters, friends, and curious onlookers filled the benches, all eager to see how the drama would unfold. The prosecutor, David Williams, was a seasoned lawyer with a reputation for being relentless. He began his opening statement by painting a picture of a woman scorned, driven to murder by jealousy and rage. Sarah Jenkins countered with a narrative of her own. She depicted Linda as a victim of circumstance, framed by those who wanted to see her fall. She argued that the evidence was circumstantial at best, and that the real killer was still out there, hiding in the shadows. The first witnesses called were Tom's colleagues and friends. They testified about Tom's behavior in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, corroborating my findings about his increasing anxiety and distraction. Mark, the friend who had seen Tom arguing in the bar, described the stranger, but his testimony was deemed unreliable due to the poor quality of the security footage. Then, the prosecution called James, the private investigator. He presented the photos and notes he had taken, detailing Linda's affair with Michael. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the evidence was displayed on a large screen. Sarah Jenkins tried to discredit James, suggesting he had fabricated the evidence for money, but his testimony remained firm. Next, the medical examiner took the stand. He described Tom's injuries in graphic detail, explaining how he had been strangled with a cord. The prosecution presented the DNA evidence, linking Linda to the crime scene. Sarah Jenkins tried to poke holes in the forensic analysis, questioning the methods and procedures used, but the experts held their ground. Linda's defense team then presented their case. They called character witnesses who spoke of Linda's kind and gentle nature, painting her as incapable of such violence. Sarah Jenkins suggested alternative theories, hinting that Tom's business dealings might have led to his murder. She introduced the idea that Tom had made enemies who could have framed Linda to cover their tracks. The trial dragged on for weeks, with each side presenting compelling arguments. I sat through every session, feeling the weight of my brother's death pressing down on me. I wanted justice, but the defense's arguments were making me doubt everything I thought I knew. Finally, it was time for closing arguments. David Williams recapped the evidence, emphasizing the DNA, the text messages, and Linda's affair. He argued that Linda had lured Tom to the warehouse under the guise of reconciliation, only to murder him in a fit of jealous rage. Sarah Jenkins delivered a passionate closing statement, urging the jury to look beyond the surface. She insisted that Linda was being framed and that the real killer was still out there. She asked the jury to consider the lack of direct evidence linking Linda to the actual act of murder. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Each hour felt like an eternity. I couldn't sleep, eat, or think about anything else. When the jury finally returned, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The foreman stood, holding the verdict in his hands. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Linda Carter, guilty of the murder of Thomas Carter." A collective gasp filled the room. Linda collapsed in her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Sarah Jenkins immediately announced her intention to appeal, but the judge, a stern woman named Judge Peterson, sentenced Linda to life in prison without the possibility of parole. With Linda behind bars, I thought I would finally find peace. But the aftermath of the trial left me with more questions than answers. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, that the full truth had yet to be uncovered. I decided to dive deeper into Tom's life, hoping to find some closure. I revisited his workplace, digging through his projects and emails. One name kept appearing: Michael. He was a business associate of Tom's, someone I had overlooked in the initial investigation. I tracked down Michael and confronted him. He seemed nervous, his eyes darting around as he denied any involvement in Tom's death. But there was something in his demeanor that made me suspicious. I hired a private investigator, a friend of James, to tail Michael and dig into his background. What we discovered was shocking. Michael had a history of shady business deals and a violent past. He had been in and out of trouble for years, always managing to slip through the cracks. Further investigation revealed a connection between Michael and Lindan affair that predated Linda's marriage to Tom. Armed with this new information, I approached the police. They were reluctant to reopen the case, but the evidence was compelling. Michael was brought in for questioning, and under pressure, he cracked. He confessed to killing Tom in a fit of rage after a business deal went south. He had used Linda's affair as a cover, planting evidence to frame her and divert suspicion from himself. Linda's conviction was overturned, and she was released from prison. She sued Michael for damages and won a significant settlement. The trial had taken its toll on her, and she decided to move away, starting a new life far from the memories of Tom and the pain of the past. As for me, the journey had changed me forever. I quit my job and started working as a private investigator, helping others find the truth and seek justice. I dedicated my life to solving cases that seemed unsolvable, driven by the memory of my brother and the desire to prevent others from suffering the same fate. In the years that followed, I uncovered many truths and solved countless mysteries, but the case of my brother's murder remained the most personal and haunting. It was a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of seeking justice, no matter the cost. My new life as a private investigator introduced me to a myriad of people, each with their own stories and struggles. One of the first cases that deeply affected me was that of a young woman named Emily. She had come to me in desperation, convinced that her father, who had been declared missing for years, was still alive. Her determination reminded me of my own search for Tom, and I couldn't turn her away. Emily's father, David, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The police had written it off as another case of a man abandoning his family, but Emily never believed that. She provided me with a stack of old letters and photographs, along with a diary her father had kept. The diary detailed his fear of a man named Victor, a business associate who had been making threats against him. I started by visiting David's last known whereabouts, a small cabin in the mountains where he often went to escape the pressures of work. The cabin was in disarray, with signs of a struggle. I found a hidden compartment under the floorboards containing documents that detailed illegal activities involving Victor and his associates. I took the documents to the police, but they were hesitant to reopen the case. Determined to get justice for Emily, I continued my investigation. I tracked down Victor, who was now living in a luxurious mansion in the city. Through surveillance, I discovered he was involved in a criminal syndicate that dealt in illegal arms and drugs. I needed more concrete evidence, so I approached a former associate of Victor's, a man named Leo, who had turned his life around and was now running a small business. Leo was initially reluctant to talk, fearing retribution, but I assured him his identity would be protected. He revealed that Victor had indeed threatened David, fearing that David would expose their illegal activities. With Leo's testimony and the documents I had found, I finally had enough to bring to the police. They raided Victor's mansion, uncovering a trove of illegal weapons and drugs. Victor was arrested, and under pressure, he confessed to having David kidnapped and killed to keep him silent. Emily was devastated by the confirmation of her father's death, but she found solace in knowing the man responsible was brought to justice. She thanked me profusely, and we remained in touch, her resilience and strength serving as a constant reminder of why I chose this path. Through my work, I met a journalist named Rachel who had been following my cases closely. She was impressed by my dedication and thoroughness, and proposed we collaborate on exposing corruption and bringing criminals to justice. Rachel had a keen eye for detail and a network of contacts that proved invaluable in our investigations. Our first major collaboration involved a corrupt real estate developer named Gregor, who was forcing low-income families out of their homes to build luxury condos. Rachel had been investigating him for months, but needed concrete evidence to publish her findings. We devised a plan to gather incriminating evidence. I went undercover as a potential investor, while Rachel posed as my assistant. We attended several of Gregor's meetings, secretly recording conversations and taking photographs of illegal transactions. One night, while searching through Gregor's office, I stumbled upon a hidden safe containing documents that detailed his illegal activities, including bribery, fraud, and even arson to force residents out of their homes. Rachel and I knew we had hit the jackpot. We took the evidence to the authorities, and Rachel published a series of exposés that shook the city. Gregor was arrested and charged with multiple crimes. The families he had displaced were able to return to their homes, and Rachel's articles sparked a citywide movement against corruption. Rachel and I became close friends and trusted partners. Together, we tackled numerous cases, from uncovering human trafficking rings to exposing corporate espionage. Our work was dangerous, but the sense of justice and the difference we made in people's lives kept us going. Years into my career as a private investigator, I received a case that would become the ultimate challenge of my life. An international crime syndicate, known as the Serpents, had infiltrated every level of government and law enforcement. They were involved in everything from drug trafficking to political assassinations, and their reach seemed limitless. A former member of the Serpents, a woman named Isabella, approached me with information that could bring the syndicate down. She had been their accountant, and she had evidence of their financial transactions and criminal activities. Isabella was in hiding, fearing for her life, and needed my help to take them down. Rachel and I knew this case was different from anything we had ever faced. The Serpents were ruthless and had resources beyond our imagination. We began by gathering all the information Isabella had provided, creating a detailed plan to expose the syndicate. We decided to leak the information in stages, starting with the lower-level members and working our way up to the leaders. Rachel's articles brought public attention to the syndicate's activities, and pressure mounted on law enforcement to act. We worked closely with a special task force, providing them with evidence and coordinating raids on the syndicate's operations. As we got closer to the leaders of the Serpents, the danger increased. They were aware of our efforts and began targeting us. Our offices were broken into, and we received numerous threats. But we refused to back down. In a final, daring move, we arranged a sting operation to capture the head of the Serpents, a man known only as the Cobra. With the task force's help, we lured him into a trap, using Isabella's information as bait. The operation was risky, but it succeeded. The Cobra and his top lieutenants were arrested, and the syndicate's operations were dismantled. The trial that followed was one of the most high-profile in history. Isabella testified against the Cobra, revealing the inner workings of the syndicate. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators, all eager to see justice served. The Cobra was sentenced to life in prison, and the syndicate's influence was significantly weakened. Rachel and I were hailed as heroes, but we knew the fight against corruption and crime was far from over. We continued our work, driven by the belief that justice must always prevail, no matter the cost. Years later, as I looked back on my journey, I realized how much my life had changed since Tom's disappearance. What began as a personal quest for justice had evolved into a lifelong mission to protect the innocent and hold the guilty accountable. Tom's memory remained with me, a constant reminder of why I pursued this path. The cases I solved, the lives I saved, and the criminals I brought to justice were all part of a legacy that honored his memory. Rachel and I continued to work together, our bond growing stronger with each case. We mentored young investigators and journalists, passing on our knowledge and experience to the next generation. The world was a dangerous place, but we were determined to make it safer, one case at a time. My life was filled with new characters and stories, each one adding to the rich tapestry of my experiences. From Emily's search for her father to the takedown of the Serpents, every case taught me something new about the human spirit and the power of justice. And so, my story continues, a never-ending quest for truth and justice in a world that desperately needs both. The challenges are great, but so is the reward. For in every victory I see a glimpse of Tom's smile, knowing that I am honoring his memory in the best way possible. Life after dismantling the Serpents was anything but calm. The fame and recognition brought by the high-profile case meant that I was inundated with requests for help. People from all walks of life sought my services, believing that if I could take down a crime syndicate, I could solve their problems too. One such case came from an unlikely source, a retired judge named Harold Jenkins. Harold was a venerable figure in the legal community, known for his integrity and unwavering commitment to justice. He approached me with a personal matter. His granddaughter, Emma, had disappeared. Emma was a bright, vivacious college student studying criminology. Harold was convinced that her disappearance was linked to her research into human trafficking rings. She had been working on a project that exposed the dark underbelly of the industry, and Harold feared that her investigation had made her a target. I agreed to take the case, knowing the stakes were high. If Emma's disappearance was indeed linked to human trafficking, we were up against a formidable and dangerous enemy. My first step was to gather information about Emma's research. I visited her college, spoke to her professors and friends, and scoured her notes and laptop for clues. Her project was thorough and detailed, identifying several key players in the trafficking ring she was investigating. One name stood out, Viktor Petrov, a notorious trafficker with ties to various criminal organizations. Emma's notes indicated that she had been following his activities closely, and her last known location was near a club he owned in the city. I enlisted the help of Rachel, who had become an indispensable partner in my investigations. Together, we visited the club, posing as potential clients to gather information. The club was a front for various illegal activities, and it didn't take long to find someone willing to talk for the right price. We learned that Emma had been seen at the club the night she disappeared, asking questions about Victor and his operations. The trail led us to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, rumored to be a holding facility for trafficked individuals. I contacted the special task force I had worked with during the Serpents case, providing them with the information we had gathered. A raid was planned, with the hope of finding Emma and dismantling another piece of the trafficking network. The raid was tense and dangerous. Armed officers stormed the warehouse, encountering fierce resistance from Victor's men. Gunfire echoed through the building as we searched every corner for Emma. In a hidden basement, we found a group of frightened women, but Emma was not among them. The rescued women provided valuable information, revealing that Emma had been moved to another location shortly before the raid. Victor had learned of her investigation and intended to use her as leverage against Harold Jenkins, hoping to force the judge to dismiss charges against his associates. The situation had become a race against time. Victor's demands were clear: drop the charges or Emma would be killed. Harold was devastated, torn between his duty to uphold the law and his love for his granddaughter. I knew we couldn't give in to Victor's demands. Instead, we devised a plan to rescue Emma and bring Victor to justice. Rachel and I went undercover, posing as representatives willing to negotiate on Harold's behalf. The ruse was risky, but it was our best chance to get close to Victor and locate Emma. We arranged a meeting at an abandoned factory, where Victor had agreed to bring Emma in exchange for immunity and safe passage out of the country. The task force was positioned nearby, ready to intervene at the right moment. The meeting was tense, with Victor and his heavily armed guards watching our every move. I could see the fear in Emma's eyes as she was brought out, bound and gagged. We stalled for time, trying to negotiate while the task force moved into position. At the agreed signal, the task force stormed the factory. Chaos erupted as gunfire rang out. Victor tried to flee with Emma, but I managed to intercept him. A fierce struggle ensued, and I was able to free Emma while the task force apprehended Victor and his men. Emma was shaken but unharmed. She was reunited with her grandfather, who was overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. The operation was a success, and Victor was brought to trial, where he was convicted of multiple charges, including human trafficking and attempted murder. With Victor behind bars and Emma safe, I thought things would return to normal. But the case had left a lasting impact on all of us. Emma decided to continue her studies, inspired by her ordeal to fight against human trafficking. Harold, too, was determined to use his influence to advocate for harsher penalties and better protections for victims. For me, the case was a stark reminder of the darkness that existed in the world and the importance of our work. It strengthened my resolve to continue fighting for justice, no matter the cost. Rachel and I continued to work together, taking on cases that ranged from corporate espionage to missing persons. Each case brought new challenges and dangers, but also the satisfaction of knowing we were making a difference. One day, a mysterious client approached us with an unusual request. The client, a wealthy businessman named Robert Langford, claimed that his wife, Isabel, had been kidnapped. What made the case strange was that there had been no ransom demand, and Isabel's disappearance had been kept out of the media. Langford was willing to pay a substantial sum for our services, but something about his demeanor made me uneasy. He seemed more concerned with keeping the situation quiet than with Isabel's safety. We began our investigation by looking into Isabel's background. She was a philanthropist known for her charitable work, particularly in supporting women's shelters and education initiatives. There were no apparent enemies or threats that would explain her disappearance. As we delved deeper, we discovered that Langford's business dealings were not as clean as he had presented. He was involved in several shady investments and had connections to organized crime. It became clear that Isabel's kidnapping was not a simple case of ransom, but was likely tied to Langford's criminal activities. Rachel and I worked tirelessly to untangle the web of deceit surrounding Langford. We interviewed his associates, dug into financial records, and followed leads that took us to the darker corners of the city. We uncovered a plot that involved Langford's business rival, a ruthless man named Carlos Silva. Silva had orchestrated Isabel's kidnapping to leverage Langford into handing over control of his company. The situation was more dangerous than we had initially thought, and Isabel's life was in grave danger. We decided to confront Langford with our findings. He was furious but had no choice but to cooperate if he wanted to save his wife. We devised a plan to rescue Isabel and expose Silva's operations. The rescue mission was fraught with danger. Silva had anticipated our move and set a trap. As we entered the warehouse where Isabel was being held, we were ambushed by Silva's men. A fierce firefight ensued, and it took all our skill and determination to fight our way through. We found Isabel in a locked room, weak but unharmed. Silva attempted to escape, but we cornered him, and in the ensuing struggle he was fatally wounded. With Silva dead and Isabel safe, the immediate threat was over, but the aftermath was complex. Langford's criminal activities were exposed, and he was arrested for his involvement in various illegal schemes. Isabel, despite her ordeal, decided to use her influence and resources to support victims of crime and advocate for justice. The Langford case had a profound effect on me. It highlighted the interconnectedness of crime and corruption and the impact they had on innocent lives. I decided to expand my agency, bringing in more investigators and specialists to tackle a wider range of cases. Rachel and I continued to lead the agency, but we also took on a mentorship role, training new recruits and sharing our experiences. Our agency became known for its integrity and relentless pursuit of justice, attracting clients from all over the country. One of our new recruits, a former police detective named Jack, brought fresh energy and perspective to the team. Jack's background in law enforcement complemented our skills, and together we took on some of the most challenging cases of our careers. One of our high-profile cases involved the disappearance of a young heir, Lucas Davenport. Lucas was the only son of a wealthy family with vast business interests. His disappearance threatened the stability of the family empire and drew significant media attention. We were hired by Lucas' father, Richard Davenport, a stern and influential man. The family dynamics were complex, with various relatives vying for control of the empire. We suspected that Lucas' disappearance was an inside job, motivated by greed and power. Our investigation revealed a tangled web of family secrets and betrayals. Lucas had been involved in a secret relationship with a woman from a rival family, a fact that had been hidden from everyone. We traced Lucas's last known movements to a remote cabin owned by the rival family. The cabin was heavily guarded, and it was clear that Lucas was being held against his will. We planned a covert operation to rescue him, coordinating with local law enforcement to ensure a swift and safe extraction. The rescue was successful, and Lucas was reunited with his family. However, the fallout from the case was significant. The rivalry between the Davenport family and their rivals intensified, leading to a series of legal battles and public scandals. Through it all, Lucas remained resilient. He decided to take control of his destiny, stepping away from the family business to pursue a career in social work, inspired by the people who had helped him during his ordeal. As our reputation grew, so did the scope of our cases. We were approached by international clients, and our investigations took us across borders. From cybercrimes in Europe to kidnapping rings in South America, we tackled global challenges with the same determination and integrity that defined our work. One of our most complex cases involved an international art theft ring. Priceless artworks were being stolen and sold on the black market, and the trail led us through several countries, uncovering a network of thieves, dealers, and corrupt officials. Our investigation required close collaboration with international law enforcement agencies and local authorities. We faced numerous obstacles, from language barriers to differing legal systems, but our persistence paid off. We discovered that the mastermind behind the thefts was a brilliant but elusive figure known only as the Maestro. Tracking the Maestro became an obsession as we followed leads and pieced together clues from various heists. Our efforts culminated in a dramatic sting operation at an exclusive auction house, where the Maestro planned to sell a stolen masterpiece. With the help of our international partners, we apprehended the Maestro and recovered the stolen artworks. The case received widespread acclaim, and our agency's profile rose even higher. The experience reinforced the importance of international cooperation in fighting crime and protecting cultural heritage. Despite our successes, the toll of the work was significant. The constant danger and high stakes took a physical and emotional toll on all of us. I found myself struggling with the weight of the responsibility and the relentless pursuit of justice. Rachel, ever perceptive, noticed my struggles and suggested I take some time off to recharge. Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing that the agency was in capable hands with Rachel and our team. I retreated to a small cabin in the mountains, seeking solace and reflection. The tranquility of nature provided a much-needed respite, and I spent my days hiking, reading, and simply being. During this time, I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, including a local artist named Elena. Elena's art was a reflection of her vibrant spirit, and her presence brought a sense of joy and renewal to my life. My time in the mountains helped me find balance and perspective. I realized that while my work was important, it was equally important to take care of myself and cherish the relationships that mattered most. I returned to the agency with renewed energy and a clearer sense of purpose. Rachel and I continued our work, but we also made time for our personal lives, ensuring that we didn't lose ourselves in the pursuit of justice. Elena became an integral part of my life, and her creativity and passion inspired me in new ways. Together, we explored the world, blending our professional and personal lives in a harmonious balance. As the years passed, our agency continued to grow and evolve. We took on new challenges and adapted to the changing landscape of crime and justice. Our legacy was built on integrity, determination, and the unwavering belief in the power of truth. Through it all, the memory of Tom remained a guiding force. His loss had set me on this path, and his spirit lived on in every case we solved and every life we touched. My story is one of perseverance and resilience, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring quest for justice. It is a story that continues to unfold, with new chapters waiting to be written and new challenges to be faced. And so, my journey goes on, driven by the same principles that have always guided me: truth, justice, and the unbreakable bond of family.
Hello, it's really crazy and story. What do you think? Write comment, put likes to my channel, Instagram and Discord. Good luck!